This is the Inspection Pros Podcast, where we break down everything you need to know to grow a successful home inspection company. Join host Jake as we get insider knowledge from the industry's best on how to take your business to the next level.
Welcome back to Inspection Pros Podcast. Today, we are very excited to bring you Wally Conway, the owner of HomePro Inspections, who you may have seen on TV or radio with his various shows. And also today, I'm very excited to have Mark Hummel with me of IEB, who's going to help me in interviewing Wally. Mark knows Wally personally through their connection with IEB, and Wally has taken advantage of IEB and really used it to grow his company and their philosophies to grow his company in the last couple of years. So I'm very excited to get Mark's perspective on Wally's growth. So Mark, let's jump right into it. What questions do you have for Wally about his company and RGT and how he was able to use that?
Love it, Jake. Thank you so much. And of course, Wally, thanks again for your time today. So like Jake said, let's jump right on in and get to know Wally. So Wally, with so many accomplishments at this point, what in the world are you up to today? In my mind, you're just living on your boat and having fun all the time. What does it really look like in your world?
There is a perception I'm on the boat all the time. And in that sense, Mark, I got to tell you, COVID was a bit of a blessing when we were really forced to shut the office down. I built a broadcast studio on my boat, named it Studio C, and for nearly 2 years ran the empire as it is from the boat with everyone else at home. So that was a really good thing. Came back to the office about a month ago to really work closely with the team to facilitate the growth that we're looking to participate in over the next few years.
Wonderful. Yeah, I could definitely see that being a huge asset during the COVID days for sure. And yeah, let's take it way back. So just a very brief description of your journey into the home inspection space and what brought you to where you are today.
So I got started in 1994. The intention was to be chucking a truck and just augment my Navy retirement to bring me back up to that standard of living that I was accustomed to. ASHI was active in our area at that time. I started going to meeting with other chucking a trucks and people who had the aspirations to become home inspectors. And people started asking me, hey, can I come work with you? And I was like, well, sure. So that's how that started. It was serendipitous. There was no grand design at that point in time. And frankly, there were no models to follow. There were very, very, very few companies in the entire country going back to the early 90s that were more than a person or a person and their brother. It was just very, very rare.
So how did you go from in the 90s to just supplementing your income to building the team that you have today? What were the pivot points that kind of led you there?
The biggest of the pivot points was my default answer is yes. So when someone asked me the question, hey, can I come talk to you about being a home inspector? Yes. Can I come talk to you maybe about working together? Yes. Can I talk to you about an ancillary service? Yes. My goal very early became whenever we worked hard enough to cause a customer to call and ask for something, for the default answer to be yes. And one of the funniest ones, a decade or so ago, we had a wonderful young lady named Amy working with us, and a customer called and said, do you do screenings for meth labs? And Amy was attentive in the training, and she said yes. So she scheduled it. And she came back to me and said, well, I just scheduled a meth screening. Do we do that? And I said, well, yes. So I got online. Thankfully, the internet had emerged by then. I found a guy in Colorado, was a Chuck, what do we call that? One-man band home inspector guy. Yeah. His next door neighbor was a retired DEA agent. And over a barbecue, apparently, between their two households, they got talking about how the DEA guys, for their own safety and initial probable cause, had a field screening test. And this home inspector was looking to augment his income by selling these little tests. I had him FedEx me some of those tests, and we were in the meth lab screening business by saying yes before we knew where we were going.
Wow, Wally, that's it. It sounds like a silly story on the surface, but there's so much power and wisdom in that. The power of yes. And what I heard kind of come out of that too is the power of who. Like you gave somebody a phone call, you connected, and you started to build that as you were going.
Yeah, the who thing is really important to me because I didn't come from a construction background and I didn't come from a business background. I came from a Navy pilot background. We were all about who. Who can I talk to help me with this? Who can I talk to help me with whatever it was? And home inspectors historically have been very closed in. There was this idea that, gosh, if I share something with Jake, he'll steal my secret sauce. Well, the truth of it is most of our sauce is not all that secret, and it probably doesn't taste that great to the consumer anyway. So by having a collaborative mindset as opposed to an isolationist mindset, everyone gets a little bit better and a little bit stronger. So who is everything, Mark? Who is everything? Who, not how? That should be a book.
Imagine that. Yes, it should be. So Wally, let's talk a little more about who in this regard. What does your team look like today in your inspection business?
We've got 20 to 23 people, depending on the week. We move up and down. We've got about a dozen in production, meaning they're out in the field doing something related to home inspections or a commercial inspection company or a pest control company. And then there's about 8 folks, and I hardly count myself. I don't do anything in production, and some would argue I don't do much in the office, but who are in support of that, between our growth folks, making sure the phone rings and it rings with people asking for the right things, our operational staff, making sure everything gets where it goes. We describe operations as being everything that isn't services or isn't growth. So it kind of goes that route. So for us, it's been that evolution of a collection of technicians bumbling about, hoping we did well, to having a level of leadership and process and systems so that we give every person in the company the highest probability of being personally and professionally successful working together.
It's so important. Empowering your team to do what they need to do to build the success for the company.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, as evidence of that, if you hear chattering in the background, they're having a leadership team meeting next door, and I didn't get invited. So that's either very flattering that we've done well in putting wonderful people together, or they're trying to figure out what to do with the old guy. I'm not sure, but I did not get invited. It looked very productive over there.
It's one of those things where there is definitely a lesson, right? There's a lesson in there somewhere. Wally didn't get invited to his own team's leadership meeting. So they must be functioning at a level that doesn't require his attendance.
And to scale that down a little bit, one of the tremendous fears I hear from people who are still operating alone is that idea of, well, no one could ever inspect like me. And how could I trust that next person to do the job? And there's all that fear associated with letting go. And the truth of it is, the good stuff doesn't happen until you let go. Let the other ideas percolate. And quite frankly, letting your same idea percolate from their mind rather than it all sounding like suggestion. It's much nicer to let others meet, individuals meet, come up with an idea. Then all you need to do is praise it and support it, and off they go, because they're already bought in since it was their idea.
How did you create that environment for your team, Wally?
Went to a lesson I got a long time ago. I was on an air wing staff on an aircraft carrier. We were a very small staff, but we were the staff responsible for all the squadrons on the aircraft carrier. And I worked for a guy named Jerry Norris, brilliant guy, simple guy. And we had one of the first networks in history. We all had those little Macintosh computers that didn't even have a hard drive. It had a floppy disk. And we wired them between our 6 staterooms. Probably unauthorized to have a network inside of an aircraft carrier that a bunch of knuckleheads ran with cable. Anyway, we would send these little cute messages back and forth to each other, jabbing each other like guys are intended to do. And the Air Wing commander, we called him CAG, Carrier Air Group Commander. CAG would send out these little leadership quirks, little quips, and about what he thought leadership was. So I felt like a wise guy at the time. Maybe I still do. I sent a little note along the network, said it is the true leader is not the superior who instructs the subordinate on how to proceed, but rather the subordinate who influences the superior in the proper direction to go. I thought I was a pretty sly guy. A little time went by. He sent the note out to the network, said, no. It is the superior who plants the seed so gently in the mind of the subordinate, then he believes the idea was his own, which explains why he was the Air Wing commander and I was just a flunky on the staff.
That's a great story. Yeah. And the fact that he was so beautifully able to point it right back to you and use that teachable moment was awesome.
Yeah, it's another funny thing about that time frame and trusting people and getting things done. At that particular time, this was in the late 80s, releasing messages from aircraft carriers was a big deal. It took special authority. And for the air wing to send out messages, he would have to sign it and would go to the communications center and they'd release it. Well, that got to be a bit of inconvenience. And a couple of us got very, very good at signing his name. And no one really cared. He probably knew and didn't say anything. Maybe the communications knew and didn't say anything until one night his signature was rejected as not authentic. And that was the end of that scam.
Interesting. All right, Wally, I'm going to throw some questions at you that I typically get when I'm talking to people in the industry who want to scale and grow their inspection companies. And let's just see what comes up. So typically I'm talking to either a sole proprietor or a small team, or maybe somebody who's made it even to your level and is looking to go to whatever's next for them. So some of the common things I hear is, how do I get my phone to ring? Well, those small teams are really struggling with their growth activities. What advice would you give a small team today?
So I think what happens is when that initial desire to scale comes along, they concentrate on bringing in another technician before they've concentrated on more business. The second thing I think that they very often do is they bring in that first guy with the intention of giving them the overflow. Well, that just doesn't work. There has to be a commitment from day one that the priority is to feed the next guy. So let's make believe an individual inspector is at 100% capacity and they're turning away business, like 10% overage. They're like, this is killing me. I'm turning away 2 or 3 jobs in a week. So they hire a guy, give that guy 2 or 3 jobs in a week. They work on some goofy percentage split, and that other guy's starving. If the other guy's starving, he has to go elsewhere. He has to do other things to feed his family. What do they historically do? They ask for more money. So if they get more money, now the economics is all out of kilter and they've got another guy and they're losing money on it. Or they make the good decision not to give them more money, that is per inspection. And that inspector says, I can't do this any longer. And they go out and take business with them. So when in my mind, and it's the way we managed it initially and still do, the only money I ever get out of the company is whatever money's left over. I mean, I draw a small salary at this point, but I've never fed me first. I've always fed me last. And that's for our friends who are former Marines, they know that the most junior Marine eats first and the general eats last. And if you bring that into your business, you'll have a much better probability of developing some amount of loyalty and some amount of stick-to-itiveness when things do get tough.
Seems true too, that if you fill the other person's plate first, it may free you up to be the business owner as opposed to the lead technician.
You're exactly right. That's what's supposed to happen. That classic one-liner of working on your business, not in your business. If you're doing 8 or 10 inspections in a week and you've got 2 or 3 other people you're attempting to feed, you don't have the physical energy or the mental energy to do the things you need to do to train them, to develop them, and to get your growth people, or you as the growth person initially, doing the things that have to happen. So it falls apart. I've watched people over the years do that 2, 3, 4 times. Can't figure out why it keeps working. It's like, stop banging yourself on the thumb, man. There's got to be a different way.
Absolutely. And Wally, the last time you joined us on an episode, we had talked about the structure you use to benefits and incentives to pay your team members. And what I'm wondering is, when you just said that by feeding them first, you are able to bolster loyalty and the stick-to-itiveness. Do you see that giving you a degree of disaster proofing, where now if something like COVID happens a couple of years ago, do you see that loyalty come into play?
The loyalty, yes. Disaster proof is a really big, scary question. What we've done, we've transferred that risk from the individual to the company, and the company is actually me. So when there's a struggle time, I earn less. And when there's a fruitful time, I earn more. And in exchange, others have security. Mm-hmm. That's not a common or popular opinion, quite frankly, but it's mine.
It's something that I see time and time again. The companies that are, that have grown to a very large size in the industry, a lot of times are doing it because they're focused on creating amazing opportunities for their team, for the stakeholders that they work with. And that's a resounding, that is a pattern that plays out over and over and over again. When the business owners are focused on creating a big world for people, they create a big world for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. So another question we get at IEB all the time is, who should I hire first? You alluded to this earlier. So that service operations growth, those three divisions, a lot of times they're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, I'm going to hire that next technician, or I'm not busy, I'm going to hire a growth person. What's your opinion on that?
I think if I was starting alone again, or alone for a long time and looking to evolve now, the first thing I would do is unburden myself from the telephone. And then I would unburden myself from administrative things that may be the same person, that may be two virtual assistants or wherever, so that either I began to truly focus on growth or I hired a growth person. So unburdened from a phone/administration and then assistance and growth. The worst thing that'll happen if you do those two things and you don't attract, or you have difficulty finding that right first person or two, is you can just drive your fees high. That's not a bad thing. There's a lot of honor in being a one-person company, as long as you're a one-person company living the life that you've chose. If you can do the things with an immensely small team of virtual assistants that drive you to where you're doing, 5 inspections a week, 1 a day, but they're $1,000 or $1,500 a piece, well, that's a beautiful life. I'm okay with that. Where I struggle is watching people, really good people, who are working, 18, 19 hours a day, 6 and 7 days a week. They have no life, and they're losing their way, and it's impacting their health. It's impacting their relationships. So it doesn't matter the size of the business. What matters is the quality of life that business affords.
You definitely agree on that. Yeah, there's never any judgment around what somebody's vision is, whether it's them and a truck or whether it's 150 employees and a huge inspection company. The most important part is that you have clarity of vision and that you're able to create the world that you're really looking for.
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
The home inspection industry is highly competitive, and you need an edge to stay on top. You certainly can't afford to give profit away for no reason. But what if I told you credit card processors may be overcharging you and robbing you of profits you've worked hard to earn? It's time to put an end to being overcharged for payment processing. It's time to take back your profits. That's why we put together a free report, How to Avoid Being Overcharged by Your Payment Processor. Head over to takebackyourprofits.com, download the report, and put an end to being overcharged for credit card processing. You've worked hard for your sales, and you deserve to keep it. What are you waiting for? Go to takebackyourprofits.com and download your report today.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit, if that's okay, and start to talk about your experience with IEB. So you've been in IEB for a long time. You're a community ambassador in IEB, which means you reach out into the community and help us keep connection really high, offer advice, and really just help people connect. So what's your experience been like with IEB?
Well, I love it. I've been here a while now in the IEB troop, probably 2.5 years, but I was not an early adopter. Looking back, I'd be proud to say I was a plank holder in the organization, but that's just not the case. I rejected the calls and the messages for a good year or two until I got a call from Rob Lemoyne, and I had a very strong personal and professional relationship with Rob. And he found IEB before me, and he called me one day. He said, "Look, pal, you're missing out. You're missing out on the kinds of conversations that you love to engage in. You're missing out on the kinds of conversations you love to contribute to. Just trust me and get your butt here." So my first experience was October. It was 2 years ago, October, whatever year that was. I don't even know. I've been here about 2.5 years now. Mm-hmm. And it was the RGT that was hosted in Atlanta by Rob and Kat. So I was already moving into an environment of love and trust with them. And, within 15 minutes of sitting down, I was just blown away with the messaging. It was exactly the right group of conversations for me. And it was more about the right conversations for me personally and mindset wise than it was right conversations about where I was business wise. Yes, they were right for where I was business wise. That was not nearly as important as engaging in the right personal, the quality of life, the financial decisions, the where am I going now decisions, the reasons that we work. Gary Keller, and as you know, Mark, I'm a big Gary Keller fan, says the purpose of business is to fund the perfect life. Well, through the one sheet that's such an integral part of what we do in IEB, that one-page personal business plan of what I want to do, once you have clarity on the things you believe you'd like to do through your life, the next task is funding them. And I believe that too many people struggle with funding because they don't first have clarity of why they're attempting to fund anything. They just go from day to day and payment to payment. And I really like clarity. Back to Gary Keller. Gary says, clarity is power, personally and professionally. I added that last part.
Wally, first, for those listening, Wally's alluding to two things. First, IEB focuses on a holistic approach to building a business, which is you, the people you love, the things you care about, and then the business. And so there's a lot that goes into that, of course. When we're talking business, we think systems, processes, models, financials, all the different things that go into that. That's what we teach and we coach home inspection companies. But Wally, I'm going to throw this at you. What does the phrase mindset, then strategy, then tools mean to you?
I got exposed to mindset probably 20 or 25 years ago in a bar in Green Cove, Florida. There was a redneck carpenter that would come in there, and right before the fellows would start punching each other after too many beers, the guy's name was Shiner. He's a carpenter, and as some of you know, Shiner is a nail that doesn't hit the right place. I guess that's how he got the name Shiner. But Shiner jumped up off the stool and he said, "Get your mind right, get your mind right." And out of the mouths of simpletons come the greatest things. But once you have a mindset of abundance, you have a mindset of helping others, you have a mindset of philanthropy, when you begin to feel good about what goes on between your ears, the tactics or strategies first and tactics to accomplish and to enhance those good feelings is really quite simple. I believe most folks in any business or in their lives, alone home inspection business, come at it backwards. They're always looking for that tactical thing. Then after they get a few tactics that are working a little bit, then they're trying to get a strategic thing. And then they wake up one day miserable and say, where the hell am I going with this? And I believe that's backwards.
We do too. Same page. So you get the mindset right. And for us, the way we describe that sometimes is, hey, let's stop thinking like a technician to grow this business, and let's think like a CEO or a business owner. And when we get our mindset right, then we'll know how to craft the strategy. And then when we know how to craft the strategy, we'll know exactly which tools we need. So many people in service-based businesses and the inspection industry, particularly, are technicians that we love. They start the other way around, like you said. I've got all these tools. All right, let's figure out a strategy on how to use them. And they may never even hear the word mindset. So awesome. So Wally, could you fill us in on the RGT class that we teach at IEB and just kind of let us hear about it through your lens?
So as I shared, that was my first exposure to RGT, 2.5 days of immersion with some leadership in IEB, and really talking initially about mindset, that why we're in business, how we're going to business, how to think about business, where do you want your business to go, and getting just that level of clarity. And when I went the first time, I made a really wonderful decision. I didn't know how wonderful it is. I just made it. But I took 2 leaders from our team to the very first RGT. And I did that because in other things that I've gone to alone, I'd come back and share with Tanya, my wife, or share with the leadership in the company some brainstorm I had or what I was exposed to. And I was attempting to explain what I was excited about. And in the translation, nobody got as excited as I was. And I would be frustrated with them because they didn't get it. So I thought, well, gosh, maybe if I bring them to the message, they'll get that. And what came from that is I heard everything that I heard. We all heard the same things, yet we processed it differently. And as we're together there in the event, we're exchanging what we thought about what we just heard, and then driving from Atlanta to Jacksonville, we're again integrating. So I describe IEB, and Mark, I know you've heard me say this before, IEB is a verb. RGT is a verb. There are things we do. They're not things we just show up, sit there, and hope something comes in. It's integrating into the mindset and culture. And for a person presently operating alone, wondering if this is the right thing for them, if their spouse or partner is a key piece of their business or a key piece of their decision-making, bring them to RGT. It's mind-boggling. If you have other people in your company who are leaders or you aspire to be leaders, bring them. And Mark, I know you know this, I've shared it with you before, but Jake, every time there is an RGT, we have one or more people in it. And I've been for 3 times, not counting virtual. It's just sitting and thinking and watching it. It's a time out to get that mindset in the right place. And what's come from that from us is we've had people that we did not see the leadership in, who sat through RGT, immersed in RGT, and started raising their hands on what they wanted to bring into the company and how they saw a new view of their own life and how we could collaboratively enhance their lives as they were enhancing the business. So I am a fanatic about RGT. And I will tell you also, as an ambassador, the majority of people that I speak to, and I don't know how many is on my ambassador team, maybe 20 or 25 people.
All right.
The people who are floundering personally, the people who are floundering professionally, and the people, very candidly, Mark, who say to me, well, IEB, I don't know, I got to get on a call, I got to do this. They are people who have never engaged and immersed with us directly and personally at RGT or at Unite or at Masterminds. They're thinking, gosh, I sent in money, it should fall from the sky into my dome. But I describe IEB like the Bowflex.
Yeah.
I'm a member of the IEB workout team. And every one of us who's a home inspector has inspected a home and they've seen a Bowflex in the master bedroom. Mm-hmm. And there's 2 ways you see the Bowflex. Either sweaty and worn, and that family's ripped, or it's got dirty underwear hanging on it and there are a bunch of fat loads. Sending in the payment for the Bowflex does nothing.
Yeah.
And candidly, sending in the payment to IEB does nothing. It's what do you do with that opportunity to build yourself, to build your company, and build the people around you? It's a verb.
Wally, I love your analogy that IEB is a verb, and I really appreciate you just expanding on that too. And for anybody that's curious about RGT or Unite, as Wally mentioned, the next RGT class is in May. There's all kinds of different formats and different locations for that class. You can jump on our website, iebcoaching.com, and find those different things. Our biggest conference of the year is in May as well, in the Woodlands, Texas. You can find that on our website as well. So, Wally, I'm going to ask one last question, if that's okay.
Okay.
And here's what I would ask. So, I know there are a lot of people out there that are hearing about IEB on podcasts and seeing our social media and maybe getting some emails and things like that. What would you say to somebody who's heard about it, knows about it, and just hasn't pulled the trigger?
Jump in. If you follow enough social media, there's people that say we're a cult, a bunch of Kool-Aid drinkers and crazy. So you just can't go by that. You need to get in there and take a sip on your own. And it needs to be a big sip. As I say, joining a gym, joining the Bowflex weekly thing, you got to do it. Unite is a perfect time. I'll tell you a fun personal thing about Unite. After our last group gathering, was that Unite? Yeah, it was Unite last year when we went to the retreat afterwards.
Yes, sir.
I made a commitment to the group and 6 or so others made a commitment. We went on 100-day alcohol fast so we'd get stronger together. And some of us even accomplished it. A few took a mulligan when they went to Costa Rica, but some of us just gutted it out and did the right thing. Well, about a month and a half ago, due to a situation with one of my daughters, I said to her, I think you need to change your life a little bit. and let's go on a 100-day alcohol, adult daughter. She's not 9 years old. She's in her 30s. I had a third grader drinking too much. But I said, let's do this together. Let's go on a 100-day alcohol fast. Well, my 100 days ends the first day of Unite. So last year at Unite was the beginning of a 100-day alcohol fast. This year will be the end of it. So I will be a really cheap date for anyone who wants to have a conversation around the bar.
All right.
Oh, that's so great, man.
Yes. And thank you so much for explaining about RGT and where they can find it, Mark. Thank you for that. Because to what Wally said, I want to highlight that about how looking from the outside, you might not understand. It might seem like a cult. You could say whatever you want. But as someone that was an outsider who sat in on these classes and has heard these speeches, it's incredibly impressive. And there's a reason why Wally and Mark have joined us today to talk about this, because I think that it's something that if you haven't heard about it, you should go check it out. Go to the website that Mark described. I'll put that link in the caption. Go check it out, learn about it, ask questions, reach out to Wally. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you about it. Reach out to Mark. He would definitely love to talk to you about it, but absolutely need to dive in, check this out, and leverage it to grow your business like Wally has.
I got to address the cult thing too. The word cult is a truncation of the word culture. When we look at any successful organization, any successful business, successful families, there's a cultural commonality. And I think what happens is sometimes when people don't understand the culture of a particular group, or maybe their mindset at that particular moment isn't one that melds well with the culture of that group, they truncate it to cult and assign something else to it. So when somebody says to me, you guys, you're like a cult, I'm like, well, thank you for noticing. We're a pretty special group of people. We're like-minded, we're supportive, we care for and about each other. And I appreciate you noticing. And it usually neutralizes that particular commentary.
Awesome. Jake, if it's okay, I'll just lay out the 30-second opportunity for people here. So
absolutely.
IEB does training, coaching, events, classes, and even small groups for business owners in the inspection industry who are looking to grow and scale their business and really want to achieve time freedom at the same time. So that's what we're all about. If you're curious about IEB and you just want to have an informal conversation, or maybe even just a free deep dive into your business and get some advice and maybe a little bit of free coaching, we absolutely love doing that. And it's super easy to set up. So Mark at iebcoaching.com, or just jump on the website and do it that way. Either one is just fine.
So please, to anyone listening, take Mark up on that. You have nothing to lose, and it could mean a lot, not only for your business, but for your life. As Mark said, there's a huge focus on the work-life balance and just maximizing everything in your life. So Wally, thank you so much for joining us today. But I have one last question for you. We have talked a lot about how you got to where you are, but last question from me, what are you excited for, whether it's with IEB or in the future of your company or the industry? What are you excited for moving forward? I'm
excited about a lot of things. I'm excited that I'll be 67. Nothing hurts. Everything works. All original equipment. I take no medicine. So I'm excited about myself physically. I'm excited about my wife. I'm excited about my boat. I'm excited about the people in the business. I just stay in perpetual excitement. And that, I guess I'm strange in that I'm enthused. I'll get up at 5 o'clock in the morning with Mark to go do martial arts, just let's immerse, let's have fun, stay excited.
Absolutely. I love that.
That's contagious too, Wally. It's so fun being together in person.
Soon, my friend, soon.
Yes, and I'm sure that is a great lesson in trickle down excitement as well. I'm sure there's a lot of that in your company as you are perpetually excited. I'm sure that the rest of your company is perpetually excited and in good spirits. At least I hope so. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark and Wally, for joining us today and giving us a great interview to give us a little bit of perspective on IEB and how to grow in the home inspection industry today. I really appreciate both of you joining us.
Thanks, Jake.
All right. And thank you to our audience for tuning in. We had a great episode today, and we have a great roster of guests moving forward. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Inspection Pros Podcast. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the bell so you won't miss our next episode. This episode was produced by Jake Aronson. This has been a Pair Payments production.